The triumphant Machiste and Satana prepare their coffins for the criminal syndicate in the jungle hell of an Iguana'S Bumhole.
Welcome back to the comfortable warmth of the Iguana'S Bumhole. And it's our 5th batch of 8 as we go through the Umberto Lenzi discography, because there's something deeply wrong with us. I am Clive, and that fool over there is
Nick, and it's my fault that it's Umberto Lenzi we're doing and not, I don't know, Fernando De Leo or Sergio Martino or any of the other hundreds of Italian directors we could have done. But today is the reason why I did this. And my by the law of diminishing returns, my returns will diminish severely after this episode, because there's not a whole bunch left in the last 3 episodes that I'm that's a word, right? Especially that I'm that I'm especially excited about. But there's a few bright spots in there. But for me, this is the one. I doubt that will be the case for Clive. I'm sure Clive may have felt like he watched the same movie and it was like 8 hours long. But
yes, there wasn't too much variety in this episode. I could have done with a Zorro or a Machiste.
Right. But the whole concept of this was, if you're not, I assume you know, if you're this deep in the Iguana'S Bumhole, that we are looking at the generic cycles of Italian cinema as focused through the lenses of Lenzi. So
and lesbians as well,
and also them too. Yeah, not a lot of them in these films, actually. Funnily enough, you're more likely to come up with a travestite, whatever that is, Henry Silva.
We could subtitle it Iguana'S Bumhole number 5: A Paucity of Lesbians. In fact,
there we go, definitely. And so we're up to 1975 at this point, and we're into a brace of what apparently Umberto Lenzi himself rages at you if you call polizioteschi. He's not a fan of that term. Apparently it was invented by idiot film critics.
But Umberto Lenzi does a lot of raging, but just
I've read a few interviews just recently where he seems, and apparently on set too, he was quite a monster. I've been reading a bit more about that as well.
Right.
But yeah, so he does. We've already seen 2 of his crime films. We've seen Milano Rovente. What the hell was it called in English? Milan Gang War.
I can't remember. No.
No, anyway, and then we've
very
watched
interchangeable titles as well.
Yes, Almost Human. So we're back. We're at 1975, and we've got Henry Silva. He's back, but this time he's not playing a wooden cop. This time he's playing a wooden dad.
Yeah. Yes. It's like a variation on Jack Frost, but with wood, right?
Now, to get ahead of this...
Now, that sounds like a good film, actually. I'd quite like
it. Does. To get ahead of this, absolute trigger warning. This film has a really, surprisingly, actually, given the time period, a really surprisingly sympathetic transvestite character who is given no sympathy whatsoever by the film or by Henry Silva's supposed hero, and is the victim of a truly grueling and unpleasant hate crime. And so if you know that that's going to bum you out, steer well clear. Unfortunately, I really like the rest of this film, but that section, each time I've come back to the film, has actually gotten harder and harder for me to watch. It's rough, and it weirds me out how dismissive the film is of that character, given that they're really set up as a very helpful, nice lady who goes out of their way to help Silva out, and then gets a terrible beating, and basically they're raped more or less. Or not even more or less, directly. And then they go to hospital, and Silva shows up and asks, "Oh, are they still around? Because I still need their help." And somebody's like, "No, they're in hospital." And Silva's like, And that's the end of that. No impression that Henry is going to go visit that character in hospital. Yeah,
and I
it's
don't think
hard.
there's no way around it. Like some people, someone who might try and make special pleading. Oh no, it's the character, because he's obsessed, and I think no, it's actually just the film.
Yeah,
the
not
film being a dick.
Yeah, but it's weird because as I said, it's very strange because it's like they haven't made the character ridiculous in the way that like some of these films will tend to do.
Right.
The character is very sympathetic,
yes.
and then yeah, it's awful. And then also that's the one where Silva either can't say transvestite or just because that's the one where he goes like, I'm looking for a travestite. Like that's not how you say that word, Henry. That's another word.
That's how Henry does it.
That's a Freudian slip, perhaps, but that's not. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess I'll outline what little of the plot there is.
He needed to rub a bit more creosote in that day.
Exactly. So the movie opens basically with a little girl being led out of school. She's very cute, actually. That actor, I can't remember her name. It's not important. But she gets led out of school. She says goodbye to her friend. A nice blind man hobbles up with his white cane and says, "Oh, little girl, can you help me cross the road?" And she goes, "Oh yes," "Oh, can you help me into that bank?"
Manly voice.
Yeah, and she helps him into the bank.
Of course, I'll help you, blind old man.
At which point he pulls out a submachine gun and a bunch of his cronies rob this. It's actually a jewelry store, not a bank. They rob the place, and in one of many of my favorite scenes in this film, they're running out after having kind of the usual full-on kicking people in the face and just screaming at everyone. Running out, and the blind man pauses in the doorway to be like, "I feel like I forgot something." Oh yeah, turns around and shoots the 7-year-old girl, totally unnecessarily.
Yeah,
leaves.
This whole thing is gratuitous because I was trying to figure out while watching it. He doesn't actually need the 7-year-old girl to get into the. Nope. There's no reason to involve the 7-year-old girl other than to motivate Wooden Cigar Man, right? Yeah,
basically. And then we cut to Henry Silva. In his least wooden part of the film, actually, in fairness to him, attempting to buy a doll for his 7-year-old daughter.
A horrible doll.
Yeah, like, the original, because the clerk is originally like, "Oh, does she have an Arabella?" And he's like, "I want that one."
Yeah.
And then it looks like an uncle of mine, and then takes down this, and then
yes,
puts it next to his face.
He clearly has a very fucked up family.
Yeah. This smile smash cut to the morgue to them pulling out the 7-year-old daughter and him and his wife.
Just to get ahead of ourselves here, this was the best bit of the film. I howled with laughter.
I hoped you would enjoy this as much as I have always enjoyed.
This bit was great. It peaked for me at this point.
Quite early.
So I couldn't figure out if it was just like candidly attempting to or if it was Lenzi taking the piss, or just because everything is like I said, there's no reason for the little girl to be there in the first place. The smash cut, why that of all the fucking dolls you could have chosen? That doll will turn up again as well, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yes.
Anyway, so we're in Death Wish territory, basically.
Basically,
right?
Yes. Yeah. So right away.
Or street law, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so this was fascinating to me because apparently Umberto Lenzi said that this film was his reaction to street law because he was upset by street law glorifying, vigilantism. So he wanted to make this film as his answer, his riposte to street law. So there's two things that are weird about that. One is street law itself is surprisingly wishy-washy about its own vigilantism, right? Because like in no way does Franco Nero's character end up better off as a result of attempting to get revenge for basically a fairly minor thing that happens to him. He gets kind of roughed up a little bit and then goes on a headlong, rage thing where he gets beaten up several more times, much worse than the first time in trying to get revenge. And then it ends with him cradling the dead body of his best new friend and gives that amazing monologue about how they're going to open a garage together, and he's crying, and over there we will put the Lamborghinis, and there will be a place for snacks. It's truly one of the best scenes in any Polizio film. Anyway, so in this film, we get into a bit more granular about the whole neo-fascist thing, which shows up in a couple of these movies. It shows up in Violent Rome as well, but in this film we go a little deeper into that whole thing. But yeah, basically though, really it is just Henry Silva hunting down these scumbags who killed his daughter, and then with a pretty sweet twist ending. I think I quite like the way this film ends. I don't know if we should spoil it or not. And so in a way, I think with a lot of the films we're going to talk about today, maybe encapsulating them very briefly with a 2-line, I don't think there's any point in getting into the ins and outs necessarily, and then just talking about certain scenes, because really these films increasingly get to be what I'd call attention deficit filmmaking, right? They're just a series of strung together set pieces, often with very little connective tissue other than we have
That's my phrase.
Yes. Other than our main cop character who's angry all the time, and then a variety of scumbags who they deal justice to. But there are a few things I'd like to point that I really like. I do like that this film has, I'm sure you must have noticed that the dub job on this is the only one I've ever seen that almost feels like it's one of those American made-for-TV dubs. Because every now and again, Silva's voice drops out, and you can clearly see him mouthing things like flying fuck, but what comes out of his mouth in an entirely different dubber's voice is things like, I don't give a fiddler's fart.
Right.
It's very, given how grisly other parts of this film are, why they decided they got squeamish about the swear words when they did this English dub is beyond me. And
there's also the same house boat or whatever the fuck that thing is from Almost Human.
Yes, and it shows up again in Free Hand for a Tough Cop.
Isn't Henry Silva's character a demolitions expert as well? Is that right?
Yes.
It reminded me of it's the same setup as Rod Steiger's character in Hennessy, right? And his kids gets gunned down, but that's more political and about the Troubles and stuff like that.
Right.
So what's this
twist
of which I think we can
okay, all right,
because I'm blank. So my take.
Okay, sure.
So Manhunt is one of the ones. That slightly, other than that really great opening scene, this is one of the ones I have a slight trouble quite keeping up with your hyperbole.
Right. What the hell happens?
Yeah, that scene aside, the rest of it was it was an okay revenge thriller, quite nicely violent. Henry Silva is of course amusing, but
he's great.
I don't quite have.
Calm down.
Yeah, see, that's what you're doing now. It wouldn't occur to me to get that excited about him.
The amount of times he screams in his wife's face to calm, when somebody's throwing a Molotov cocktail through the window, he grabs her and screams in her face. Yeah, that's going to definitely chill her out, Henry. All of his interactions with the cops in this are amazing. He's constantly just balking them, and then the guy's like,
flew right over my head. Your
subjective
reaction to this film is, I didn't have it. I'm
a fairly big fan of various lobby cards from my collection of Henry Silva wooden-faced Italian performances. So Silva's mileage is going to vary considerably. I'm actually in the middle of reading a book right now, which is I just bought it today. Actually, it's that encyclopedia of Italian crime films, written by an actual Italian. It's for my taste very, very good. It's great because it's placing some of these things in their historical context, other than the movies and the directors and so on. But it'll be like, oh yeah, this character is this real person from Milan.
What's the name of this book?
Hang on. I guess I'll just go back to the cover here. It is called The Italian Crime Filmography, 1968 to 1980, by Roberto Curti. It is $160 in paperback, and it is $20 or so on. It's quite a long book.
Because the stuff about tying things into real life intrigues me.
Yeah, so they'll mention that, like, so for example, Million's character in at least 2 or 3 movies is connected to different. They'll be like, that's who this person, roughly speaking, was, or this person was famous for having done these series of kidnappings or whatever.
In the Manhunt section, Henry Silva was actually based on this, who notoriously had a weird looking uncle who looked like a clown doll from hell. So anyway, spoil away, Nick.
Okay,
I'm blanking a little bit. I can't even remember what this.
Sure. Okay. So a couple of my favorite parts of this film are, anytime that a sad cop says something like, "I too have a daughter," and Silva's response is immediately like, "Yes, but mine is dead." Fantastic. We've got he hires a private investigator, and this guy's introduced sitting behind his desk, eating food which is falling onto a porn mag, which he's then eating, scraping the food off the skin mag.
See, this is just as an example. I saw that scene, right? And I don't get, because I've seen scenes like that in other films, which introduce someone as a skeevy
blob
kind of character.
Right.
So I'm not trying to be. I'm genuinely trying to understand why does that jump out at you so much?
Works for me.
This is the greatest thing. And have you not seen that in another film, or is it done better?
I don't think I've seen some. No, I don't. I honestly don't think I've ever seen somebody eat food off a porn mag before.
Okay. No, again, I'm not trying to be, and I'm certainly not.
No, that's fine. But I'm
not trying to shit on your parade, because I don't think I could. You're clearly too
far. No. Not
in
this.
I kind of want to be infected by this bug because it sounds fun, but it's not happening for some reason. At least not for. He's also the same guy, the same sleazy guy who tells a woman that if she gives him the information he wants, he'll buy her a golden dildo to say thanks. Well, that's how we first became friends.
That is true, yes. And so there's that scene where there's so we see Silva's blood pressure just go up and up and up as the film goes on, and he just starts acting out whenever he sees anything sketchy. He immediately has to get in there and try to, Charles Bronson his way through. So there's a scene where, some people are messing with his car and he chases them all over. And then there's, it's very proto Mad Max, actually, the biker gang smashing the shit out of his car and him cowering inside with his wife. It's, I thought it was effectively staged.
We should mention that, I suppose, other than the specific thing that happens to his daughter, it does seem to be a kind of a lawless city that we're in, right?
Yeah. Get used to that, because that's all the next 4 films basically show us. There's scenes in those movies where crimes are interrupted by other crimes. That's how bad it is in Italy, apparently, in the mid-70s.
Right.
And then,
just to pause that, I understand that obviously it is heightened, right? But to what extent do you think this mirrors reality? I mean,
well, I need to read more of that book I just talked about, but I have a feeling that it maybe does more than I had even thought. I have a feeling that there was a pretty genuine. I mean, the actual title for this film is something like the average man in the street gets justice. That's the actual Italian title for this, right? And there was a lot of that sentiment, and the kidnappings, I think especially, which show up in several of these films, were absolutely rampant at this time.
Because in that Eurocrime documentary, there's some talk of, that would happen, right? Like they'd be over here in this part of Rome or Naples staging a robbery in a car chase, and then a real robbery in a car chase would be going on over here. And you hear real gunshots, and it
also created issues for the making of these films as well. Apparently, not just that, but then in at least 1 or 2 of these films, Lenzi talks about how, like, I think in the we'll get to it, but when Thomas Million's hunchback character gets into the ambulance and the 2 cop cars are chasing after, 2 other cop cars joined the chase, thinking it was real, and then and ended up in the police station with Lenzi having to explain, because again, there was no permits for any of that stuff. All that stuff shot in the street. Often the reactions of the people on the street are the reactions of people who think, oh shit, this is happening again.
Yeah,
And,
it's the same way they shot the car scene in like French Connection and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, again, those wonderful 70s.
So yeah, anyway, there's a quick scene where somebody steals a transistor radio, and Silva beats the 7 shades of shit out of him, and then other people are intervening and being like, dude, calm down, it's a radio.
So
then,
about 3 months ago, I asked you about the spoiler.
yes,
you get to it?
No, I think I have lots more to say before we get there. Sure.
Because we do have 8 films to get through, Nick,
I know.
to remind you.
Anyway, some nice straw dog stuff with, in the house with the electrifying the thing, very Home Alone. But yes, at the end of the film, we discover that
spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Yes. So he finally reaches the point. He initially tells this fascist lawyer and his kind of thug, played by that Catenacci guy we'll see a lot, baldy mustache fellow.
Yeah.
Luciano. He tells them I don't want anything to do with you. But later on, he gets frustrated enough. He goes back to the fascists. And he's like, yes, if you can help me find my daughter's killers, I'll go on one of your fascist raids. They run out, and this is a scene that's largely cut from the version I saw, and I've seen many times. There's no nudity, and there's no scene of them getting their hands smashed to pieces. The motorbike thugs, right? That scene is way longer and grislier in this cut that you found. So thank you for that. That was exciting. And then
you found it, but yeah, whatever. I'll take it.
Oh, did I? Oh, yeah, maybe I did. Maybe I did. I just never watched it for some reason. Anyway, he gets the information. He's told, we know where the killers of your daughter are, and there's this whole MacGuffin thing about a scorpion that his daughter's dying words were, I saw the scorpion. So he goes to the farmhouse where it turns out this gang is hiding out. He's got his shotgun there, and initially he's like, oh, maybe I won't go through this. I'll call the police and tell them. But then, just by happenstance, a little girl is there as well with some friends. She falls, she's crying. He has to help her up. He dries her eyes, and then he gets a even more wooden face than normal, and is like, I'm gonna fucking kill these guys. He goes into the house.
And it turns out that the boss is actually a giant scorpion animated by Ray Harryhausen.
Yes, yeah, you would never have guessed it. Oh. Flanked by a huge, freakish clown doll thing. Like out of the Muppet Show. It's very weird. Who looked quite a lot like Silva's uncle.
Who says, hello, nephew?
So, Silva goes in, kills them all. The cops show up, immediately give him an alibi, tell him, like, this is the story you're going to tell the authorities about what you just did. Silva leaves, and then the cop tells Silva's, like, left-wing reporter buddy, oh, just so you know, those weren't the guys who killed his daughter. We fucking killed those guys 2 nights ago down at, Thomas Million's boat. So he just killed some people unrelated. Yeah, they're bad guys. Right.
Oh, this is the spoiler of which you speak.
Yes. So okay. the ending is like he totally didn't get the revenge he was seeking. He killed some other random people. My favorite part of the whole movie, and maybe this is why I love this film, is the final scene is him in a car with his wife, ex-wife. Now maybe they're getting back together, and he says, everything's gonna be great, honey. It's all gonna be fine. I've gotten a new job in Canada, and our lives will be so much better. Apparently Canada in the mid-70s was a utopia, unlike
compared to this fucking shithole they live in.
Yeah.
It'd be like, and then, okay, honey, we're going to Beirut. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be so much less you'll be so much less tense. And so the end. Except that, of course, the very last scene is like some other sketchy guys off to the side, and from her having to physically restrain him from jumping out of the car to beat the shit out of them. So I'm thinking, maybe don't move to Toronto. You might want to go somewhere nice and rural in Canada, since Silva doesn't seem to be able to de-escalate. The end. Anyway, I like Manhunt far more than it probably deserves. So we'll put a pin in it there.
Agreed. I mean, just on the other side, I would say though, it's kind of fun. It's not bad. I would say it's not. It's just I don't see what you see somehow. Sure. I just do not see what you see, and I know you're not alone, because some other people do see what you see. It's not just you. You're not the sole Manhunt fan
Mhm.
out there. But for whatever reason, the dosage wasn't quite right for me.
Okay.
On this one, although I did enjoy it more than this next one, I think.
Oh yes, I have to say this is a low point for me of this brace of 8 for sure. I wondered if I would like it more this time, but I've never gotten along very well with
It's a shame
Syndicate.
it's got one of the best titles.
Yep.
Syndicate Sadists.
Mm-hmm.
Or Final Payment, Rambo's Revenge, One
Mhm.
Good Man. Yeah. And Franco Micheletti score, which is
Yes, this is
always a good thing. But it's
this
not
is the
not-
beginning of that.
but it's not the best of the Micheletti scores.
No,
That's
no,
yet
we're
to
going to get there quickly.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a decent Micheletti score. It's too schmaltzy, this one. There's too much.
Yes.
It's too much like a Western. Like he's supposed to be Shane or something like that. Like he's
Especially
he's the
considering
biker.
the title, right? Syndicate Sadists. I thought, oh,
Mhm.
here we go. This is going to be more hard edged. I suppose it is.
It has moments.
We are
but
jaded. It is kind of violent, I suppose, but
it's way syrupier than I think
agreed.
most of the other ones. Too much kiddie stuff. There's two different gooey-eyed kids constantly staring at Thomas Millian, who doesn't look. He still looks kind of shitty, to be honest.
Yeah, the extent people love Rambo in this film is
makes no sense.
Like from the beginning, people,
Yep.
Rambo, please come home and fuck my wife. Rambo, Rambo, and he doesn't really do much of anything in the film to
warrant this.
To understand why
adulation.
people love him so much.
Nope. But I will say it starts a few things for Thomas Millian. It's a prototype of his Nico Giraldi character that he's going to spin out into 12 to 15 friggin' movies for Bruno Corbucci a couple of years down the road, because he looks very much like that character looks.
But then, garbage can, right?
They're going to graft garbage can / pigsty / trashy, depending on which of the various movies we're talking about. The Monetza character, yeah. But yeah, this version is, I think, the most boring of all of Millian's characters he's going to play in these movies. This is the most boring character by far he plays.
And they go to that boat again, whatever that boat is. I was trying to look at that. The first time I saw it in Almost Human, I thought it was a dilapidated houseboat, but it's some sort of, it's got a winch on it, and it's supposed to be doing some sort of work.
Yeah.
A dredge,
and it shows up in Freehand for a Tough Cop as well, where but anyway.
And that fucking doll turns up again. That's one of the other thing. The one who looks like Henry Silva's uncle.
Yep. So basically, the story is, and as much as it is in this one, right, is that Rambo, which apparently, so then you've probably read this already, right? But the name does come from the fact that Millian attempted to get the rights to First Blood, the novel. Or maybe you don't know this, but yeah, apparently he read it.
It's not very interesting.
But I guess he couldn't get the rights, but he was allowed to use the name.
I suppose it's interesting to consider an alternative world where
Millian played that character.
Yeah,
wouldn't have worked as well for this for Rambo First Blood Part 2. Probably, I don't think he ever would have had the physique to pull that off
with a hunchback going into Nam.
And a curly afro wig on.
Right.
So basically, in this one, he comes back. He hangs out with his friend, who's very broad and kind of goofy, who is, got a kid and a wife. This kid has joined a private. Apparently, this was a thing in Italy. Apparently, these private police forces, these private.
I can well believe that.
At this time, so he's joined a private thing that are kind of dealing with mafia hits on whatever deliveries this company is making. So there is, one of the few scenes of this movie that is memorable to me at all is the scene where, quite early on, where he convinces Thomas Millian to go with him on one of these deliveries. And Millian has got his bike apparently in the back of the delivery truck. So when they throw a Molotov cocktail at it, he can ride his bike through the flaming door out of the back and chase after them. It's one of the only bits of the film that sticks with me. Not that it's even that good.
Here's a question for you. Seeing as he was on a bike a lot in those films you mentioned.
Mhm.
Is that him doing his own stunts by any chance?
Nope. I think
Okay,
Million,
okay.
and apparently very seldom in fight scenes as well. Apparently he was unlike
Oh,
Tim
that's
Early.
right. Yes,
Talk about
and he
soon.
talks about that, right? Like, what does he say? He says something along the lines of, Milian was a good actor but shit at action, and Merrily was like the
He was
opposite.
a shit actor,
Yeah.
but yes, was great at action. Yeah. So yeah, there's that bit, and then also he goes with his friend. This is like really shitty thing to do to your friend. Your friend invites you to his workplace, and then Million shows him up at everything. Like he's a better fighter, he's a better shot and all, like douchey. Like again, why does everybody love this guy? And so then his friend gets so there's been a kidnapping, right? Some doe-eyed boy has been kidnapped from his wealthy doctor parents or whatever, by it's Catenacci again. It's our friend Baldy Mustache. Catenacci's gang has kidnapped this kid, and the rest of the story is really just initially Million's friend, the goofy private cop guy, tries to figure it out and just gets brained. So you're right, it does have occasional moments where it is grittier, like that scene where they knock him off his motorbike and smash his head out against a rock is harsher. And then the rest of the movie is pretty much Million deciding to get revenge, partly by playing off a second mafia gang in town, led by a very tired and possibly drunk looking Joseph Cotton.
In a wheelchair.
In a wheelchair, yes. Who, it's another feature of these movies. We're going to see a lot of these, Hollywood actors past their prime, sort of slumming around a little bit, for better or for worse. Joseph Cotton seems really uninvested in what's going on here to me. I don't know.
Right.
He's like half asleep, it looks like. But I know he did have a pretty serious drinking problem by this point, so,
Also in there somewhere is Shirley Corrigan of Around the World with Fanny Hill.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much.
I seem to have wowed you with my trivia there, Nick.
Yeah. I have nothing else.
Wowed you to a standstill.
Yeah, as I say, my favorite part of this whole movie actually is this has, I think, the best J&B production placement shot of all time. So very near the end of the film, a now childless Joseph Cotton, because his son is played by that sketchy looking Dario Argento fellow from that Giallo.
Yeah,
from Spasmo. Yeah. He's like
if that little kid, if that little fella from Burial Ground grew up or was put on a rack or something.
Yes, exactly. So he gets executed by Million quite near the end of the film, and then we've discovered that Joseph Cotton's character has been blind. That's the twist of it. He's been blind the whole time. And so he chooses to commit suicide. Right, fine. At this table, shoots himself in the head. But like on the table is this like beautifully perfect J&B bottle, and I'm thinking like they must have just had no concerns about how the alcohol was used. Like,
well, from what I understand, they were so keen on getting product placement from J&B. Apparently, they would just put them in their films and then hope J&B would sponsor them.
Would pay them. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think it was always necessary.
I don't know that I would want to pay for that product placement.
You're near the end of your tether.
Have a glass of J&B and blow your brains out.
Yeah. If the last thing you taste.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we can skip this. I don't know if there's anything to say about it. It's not my. It's my.
I suspect you're going to get prolix later on. So, probably starting right about now.
Right about now.
Well, actually, finally, we might actually be in agreement.
Okay, well, maybe you go first, and I'll just mop up with this.
Yeah, so this is Roma a mano armata, Rome armed to the teeth, or Assault with a Deadly Weapon, Brutal Justice, The Tough Ones.
Yep.
1975. And this is one I had actually seen before, and I remember enjoying this quite a bit back in the day and enjoying it this time as well, because I thought what I like about this film is there's no pretense about being anything other than episodic trash.
Oh yeah.
And having fantastic bits of exposition, like during a bank hostage scene, like happened to bump. Oh, hey, what are you doing here? Oh, I've been installing the air conditioning with huge ducts in. That's interesting. Cue Marita Merli crawling through massive air ducts.
Fully Bruce Willising it.
Right.
Yeah,
so here we go. This is Marita Merli. Great. I think this is what does it for me as well, is the Merli effect. I like having that, makes a big difference. Dubbed by Michael Forrest.
Yes. Yeah.
Again,
I was just watching something with him. Sorry, I was just watching something with him on YouTube, and it was a Monty Hellman film that he and like Frank Wolf starred in, some sort of like monster film.
Beast from Haunted Cave.
Yes, yeah. And it was fascinating for me to see those two Italian, like to me, Italian stalwart actor guys in an American film speaking with their voices because they both did a lot of dubbing as well as acting.
Right.
Just weird. Anyway.
Pretty good film, actually, Beast from Haunted Cave. Did you watch it?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's pretty good, yeah. So anyway, so Maurizio Merli is here, and he is he's Inspector Lanzi, right?
Hang on, what the hell's his name of this? He is Tanzi, Leonardo.
Tanzi, that's right. It's right. Actually, I went down this whole thing about like, because Maurizio Merli was obviously in a brace of these films, and some of them. So this is connected to Syndicate and the Fist, and then there's these other ones where he worked for. Oh, there we go. For
here he is here. That's Maurizio. But yeah, so this is not a sequel. So this is Roma Violenta, which Violent Naples, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is a sequel to. But this is basically just they took the character and changed his name.
Yeah, and then he did these ones, this brace for Stelvio Mazzi as well. And then I was like, why am I bothering? Maurizio Merli plays the same character in all of these films,
just with a different name.
Always on the verge of having a heart attack, which is that he did die? Yeah, there's no surprise really. I mean,
49 years old on the tennis courts, sadly.
Amazing.
But I was in this, actually, sorry, just quickly. So in this book, one thing that was interesting to me was they mentioned that, like, when he died, all the obits didn't mention these films. Like, really? Like he said, apparently by '89, nobody in Italy would like talk about this stuff. They were like, oh, we don't talk about the fascist cop movies. Those are not okay. So they talked about some of the random shit that like nobody has seen that he was in, rather than acknowledge why he was.
I wonder if he was on the tennis court from Challenge of the Tiger, and it was the topless tennis players that finally pushed him over the edge.
It could have been, but apparently, so I didn't know this because I don't know much about TV. The event that helped Merli reach the limelight was a TV miniseries called Il Giovane Garibaldi, Young Garibaldi, where he played Italy's most beloved historical hero, which was a tremendous success. And apparently, then being cast as, because he looked like Franco Nero, right? Because High Crime had done incredible business, right? And he looked quite a bit like, with the hair bleached blonde and the mustache, he looked like Franco Nero. He gets this job, but apparently audiences loved him also because they were like, oh, it's like Garibaldi has come back and is kicking the ass of all the scum.
Wow.
So apparently that was a big selling point for Merli for the Italian public.
Kicking ass and inventing biscuits.
That's the one.
Yes, so as well as Merli, we also got your man Thomas.
Yes.
And he's doing his hunchback shtick. A hunchback who works in a slaughterhouse.
So that scene where he's introduced, I was like, shit, that really is Merli. It's not Merli, that really is Million splitting open that cow carcass and its entire stomach just kind of pouring out, which I was just like, I'd forgotten how gross that was.
Well, what's interesting as well about the Milian character, so Milian basically is the villain of this piece, but it's interesting, he plays it very differently from Almost Human, for example. Like, it takes you pretty much until near the end to figure out that he's a total
totally
right? Because
sociopath.
he's quite
Yes.
mellow, right, throughout. He's fairly mellow, and you don't see him do any particularly nasty deeds for a while.
And not just that. So the first time I watched this film, I was totally taken aback. So basically what happens is in this section, so Murley and another cop show up at his place of work, and they're like, "We want you, come with us." And he's like, and he does that whole great bit where he kind of slips them off about how, like, you know, you wouldn't come into an operating theater and demand, you know, you'd ask permission to talk to the doctor. They get him out of the car. They've clearly planted drugs in his car, and they're like, "Okay, you're off to the station." They beat the fuck out of this hunchback at the station, like savagely beat the hell out of him. And Murley tells him, "We can keep you for 48 hours, and we can beat on you for 48 hours. He's like, "I need to take a piss." He goes into the washroom and he does that great scene where he like pisses all over the floor, right? Says, "I piss on you." And then he's like, "I fucking can't deal with this." And he slashes his wrist. Now, obviously it's to get out of the situation, but that scene plays out, and if you're identifying with Murley in that scene, there's something wrong with you. That plays with that stuff that you just don't see that often. And this is another reason why I like spaghetti westerns and I like these Italian crime films, because they do things like this that fuck around with binaries and fuck around with who you're supposed to identify with.
Yes, that's one of the reasons I like this film as well, actually, because for all those reasons I mentioned earlier as well. Yeah, it is properly, it's properly hard edged in that way. Like, it is in the same way, actually, pushed more, but in the same way as one of the reasons I like the original Dirty Harry so much is, well, especially when it was new, it's such a button pushing film. It was the tail end of a hippiedom to have a kind of fascist as your lead, and also to kind of, you know, make a point out of it as well. Like, you know, yes, you can, you know, you complain about human rights as much as you like, but I'm the guy who's going to rescue you when some junkies, you know, take you hostage in but I'm going to crawl through those air ducts and
right.
And I quite like that, because for me it's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything about Lenzi's personal politics, but for me,
he was apparently like an absolute anarchist.
Right.
So the more I've been reading about this,
it depends on film by film, or, you know, director by director, or whatever. But I feel here, at least, it's more playful than anything else. Right? It's so ridiculous. So
yes, this is the one too, right? I'm not wrong. This is the film where one of the dubbers actually does that thing, which is quite famous. I'm pretty sure it is in this one, where it's later in the film, and it's been episode after episode after episode of Lenzi, of Doc Murley, like getting in various scrapes, and his subordinate guy, or his immediate boss, shows up at the scene of yet another thing of him beating up some person-atcher or whatever, and says, "I can't believe they wrote the script this way." And it's totally fourth wall breaking, and it's clearly, I'm imagining, not in the Italian script. It's something that the dubber was just, "This is fucking ridiculous."
Right. But it's not so. I mean, to that said, I wouldn't want to oversell it. It doesn't go. It's not like a total balls to the wall action fest either, right? I mean, it does. But it's not slow moving or anything like that. But it does move at a certain pace. Like, you got to be into it. Like, I think you have to get into it. It's not necessarily. So for me, I've always thought a good gateway drug. I think one of the more underrated Poliziotteschi films that just works straight up, even if you're not into it yet, is Ruggero Deodato's Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man.
Well, yes, of course.
You really like Live Like. So I think that's like, watch that, or maybe Street Law first. Kind of get into the mood, and you want to be in the mood for, you know, people on motorcycles with chains and stuff like that. And then I think Rome Armed to the Teeth is kind of your next kind of point of entry, maybe, because then you're comfortable in it, and then this is it kind of to more slightly parodic extremes, right? Would that be fair, do you think?
Yeah. Although I mean, I would say for me, I don't think this is a poor place to start either. He's got the driving Michelizzi score, and the police stuff. So I mean, your issue, say for example, with the Giallos was like they grind to a halt in those sections where it's just people talking in rooms.
Yes.
But because of Merle, that doesn't happen in this, because every time Merle's in a room with somebody, he's shouting at them about how his hands are tied and they need special laws like they have in Germany so that he can deal with the situation. Like it never turns down.
It's so intense. He could have a scene in the middle of the film where he's knitting a sweater and he would knit the most intense
furiously.
Yeah. Gotta get this ready.
This is also the one. This is also the great one where his like girlfriend is a bleeding heart social worker who keeps letting these motorcycle punks off with like, you know.
Oh yes, the very attractive Maria Rosario Omaggio. I became curious about her actually. She's in some sexy stuff, I think. So
yeah. No, she's a cutie for sure. But yeah, like all of the scenes of him haranguing her in like restaurants and stuff about how can you be such an idiot? You know, and she's like, and then when she leaves, she leaves like clearly in tears, and then the other cop gets up and he's like, no, she has to cool off. Yeah, because you were just screaming at her in a crowded restaurant, Maurizio.
Other women in this film, Gabrielle Lepori is the woman who gets raped.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and
that's Quinn.
And you got Maria Rosario Ruizzi, who was in the Mandingo ripoff Mandinga, who was another one that jumped out to me. And we should mention that the footage from the violent professionals of a white BMW going through some boxes.
Yep, it does show up again. Yeah,
it's funny as well. In this one, I was watching it. It's interesting to see how it's. I still think it's bizarre that they went out of their way to integrate it into
Almost Human.
Well, it's like I'm wondering if it was anytime they happened to have like a white BMW or something like that, and they were like, "Hey, you remember?" Because the thing is that flaming BMW, it's a good stunt, but it's not necessarily like a
showstopper.
Yeah, it's not like wow. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not quite sure why it turns up in
at least
3 other
films. 3 or 4 films. Yeah.
There's a non-Lenzi one, Silent Action. I think it's in which I haven't seen, but yeah. So we should mention that makes and it's got good rooftop chase scenes and car chases, and I will say after all that, the ending is a bit of an anticlimax. I don't even remember what the ending is now, but
I think it's just a shootout. It's just a shootout.
Yeah,
it's basically a warehouse.
That's right. Yeah. And Thomas Nallian gets shot, or does he? Well, he does get shot, but whether he died, sure. But I thought that was like after all the other stuff, just bang bang. That was a bit boring. Like he could have had a more exciting.
Yes. A few other things worth mentioning are Ivan Rasimov is in this.
Oh yes, I forgot he was in it.
Possibly slightly wasted because he's not in much.
I think so.
But he does play a nicely skeevy drug pusher who's like keeping his girlfriend strung out. And,
that's Gabriella Lepori, yeah.
Yeah, not letting her call her mom, and then eventually deliberately ODs her. And it also has all of that scatological stuff, right? Which we'll be coming back to again and again later with Million. But so at one point, Million's pissed off. He's got the hump with Merle, so he basically sends his guys out to beat up Merle's girlfriend.
Apologies to Hunchback viewers there for Nick's insensitive remarks.
Yep,
I've tried telling him, but
so that's when she gets taken to the auto wrecking graveyard, which we'll see in every movie. Every movie involves a stop off at the auto graveyard.
I'm always happy to see. I'm glad I am glad you've taken their way of saying it rather than just as a junkyard.
Yeah.
No one says auto graveyard.
I think there's a line in an Iggy Pop song where he calls it that. But anyway, so yeah, they take her there and they put her in a car and they nearly crush her and they scare her and all that stuff. So then she passes out and she's at hospital and the doctor gives a bullet. He's like, we found this clenched in her hand, and he gives it to Merle, and Merle's like, all right. So Merle goes to Million's sister's house, and Million's happens to be having dinner there. Force feeds him the bullet. Million swallows it. Later in the film, Million's like, I was having a shit this morning and I felt something hard in there, and that's weird because normally I'm pretty regular. And and there it was, and I'm gonna shoot him with this bullet that I shit out.
It's funny, I was watching that scene, and it was a shame because if I'd hadn't seen this other film recently, that would have worked better. But just a week or two ago, I was watching. I can't even remember what it was now. I was watching some other film, and someone was forced to eat a Rolex watch, which seemed much more difficult to swallow. So,
and the edges on that when it came back out.
So this was comparatively. Oh yeah, I could eat a bullet. That's
yeah.
Like the film where someone had a Rolex. Oh, it's the Charles Bronson movie and Kinjite. Forbidden Subjects.
Right.
It's what's his name? Jimmy Smith? Not Jimmy Smith's. Who? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's that other kind of guy who always played 80s Hispanic villains and pimps. It's him who's forced to eat a Rolex. Yeah.
So one last thing I'll say before we move on is that so this film, there's the gang of, you mentioned before, there's a particularly grisly rape scene in this, and it's got a gang of like young rich kids who are kind of or wilding, right? And the lead one looks very kind of like Topher Gracie, from that 70s show, which is weird. But anyway, apparently that's based on a real thing that happened. So that's mentioned in this book here, that there was these groups of like the Young Monarchists Club and stuff, of these young rich kids who are going out and basically like beating homeless people to death and basically being like, you shitty proletarians, we're going to show you what to watch.
It's like a slightly more insane version of in the UK, the Bullingdon Club, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, apparently that was a thing. And so there's a number of Polizios that have references to that in them.
Well, it's interesting actually. While watching, in a way, even though, like I said, I enjoy Rome Anthony's quite a bit, and and part of the fun is it's episodic, kind of tick the box. Excuse me. But at the same time, I was thinking, I would like to see the kind of 10 to midnight or American Psycho turned on its head version. I would like to see the Mario Merli, after the rich kid psychopath.
Yes.
Just focused on that and all the kind of class outrage. But I don't think there is one, is there?
I don't know. I can dig in because I know that there's a couple of films that are more focused on that specific thing. There's like maybe Fernando De Leo
too, but I couldn't remember what they were.
I think there's a Fernando De Leo maybe. That might be the lesser known one. But anyway, I'll take a look. So we're on to Napoli Violenta then.
Well, I was just going to say, worth mentioning as well. So apparently there was the Terry Levine strikes again and his Aquarius. They cut like 10 minutes out of this, right? And
shot extra footage, which is even weird.
Yes, which replaced Rome with New York as well, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm guessing as well, I think they even changed like some newspaper headlines, or instead of people saying, "Oh, this happened here," it suddenly happens in the East Village or something. And this version
I've seen this, but so long ago that it may be the first way I saw the film. Right. I saw this on VHS.
Well, this is my question. So did you watch it on VHS as hosted by Sybil Danning? Is that the VHS version?
I may have back then. Yeah, possibly.
So now you may move on.
Okay, all right. So we're into to Violent Naples or Napoli Violenta, which again we're really upping the Franco Micheletti score at this point. This is where it me.
Yeah. This is
off the charts.
Yeah.
This has
one of his. I mean, the theme alone. This is Yeah, this stuff gets played in my car quite a lot because it's very good driving music as well.
Good. So do you have the same problem I do? Is that you start driving like
Like a
Fabio
maniac.
Testi? I can't not speed when listening to Franco Michelizi music.
Yeah.
It's gonna get me fucking arrested.
I only ever put it on when I'm on the highway. I don't do it when I'm pootling around the streets of Tokyo.
No.
I'm going to run over a hunchback.
Exactly. And this also has that incredibly bizarre song, "A Man Before Your Time," which the lyrics sound like it's about something totally different, right? It's the they took you out of school and put you on the road. You've got to earn your money, sonny. Wash my car, you look so funny. Feel the heat upon your body now. Shine my shoes, you look so dirty. Like it sounds like it's about.
Once again, this sounds like our first date, Nick.
It does actually. You're right.
Yes.
So anyway, this one, I'll say the only thing I have against this is it wastes John Saxon. We're going to see how much better John Saxon can be very soon.
This is a step down. This is a step down from Rome Armed to the Teeth. I didn't get on with this anywhere near as well, even though it's got some cool ideas. I like the bowling ball to the head. That's
yes.
Fun. But this, after Rome Armed to the Teeth, this was a little bit more generic, despite having both Maurizio Merli and John Saxon, right?
Yes.
And Barry Sullivan as the bad.
Barry Sullivan.
Yes.
This is a sequel. We're going to get kicked off here in a second. This is a sequel to Roma Violenta. But Roma Violenta, not directed by Lenzi. It's interesting how producers were okay with that and directors were fine with, like, oh yeah, let him direct a sequel to my movie. I don't know. Yeah, maybe in Hollywood it was the same. I think I saw this before I saw Rome Armed to the Teeth. So that for me, like originally, like the first time I saw these films, because it was, they weren't easy to come by. They were lent by friends and stuff. They weren't, in the VHS gray market days. And so I probably have fonder memories of it. But I agree. I think placed directly after Rome Armed to the Teeth, it's definitely the lesser of those two. So John Saxon's real name is Carmine Orico or Oricho, which is I didn't realize he was fully Italian, like that. His dad was Italian American, but his mom was from like Calabria, and so the language spoken at home was Italian. It makes sense why he's so comfortable in these films, just going back and forward in his English dialogue to Italian and back to English again. But as it explains
why the Italians embraced him so much as well.
Well, yeah, it would be easy to work with him because he could take direction in Italian.
But also they could have played that up. I'm sure the fact that John Saxon is of Italian heritage is probably a lot more well known in
Italy
than it is in the States, right?
Yeah. So this one basically it is the same character, right? It's Inspector Betty from Roma Violenta, directed by Marino Girolami.
Inspector Betty is not the hardest name in the world, is it?
It's not. No, it's not. Directed by what did I say? Marino Girolami, whatever his name is. Anyway, Enzo G. Castellari's dad, right? Who later on went on to direct Zombie Holocaust,
right? Which is any good? Violent Roma Violenta? Any good?
It's got John Steiner in one of his best roles, I think. It's nice to see. You don't see that many Englishmen other than what's his name that we talked about before from Pieces.
Edmund Purdom.
Yes, Edmund. Yeah, you don't see that many actual English actors in these kind
John
of things.
Steiner's in Roma Violenta. Is he the star? Oh, okay.
He's the lead villain. Yeah.
Ah, okay. I always thought he would have been if they'd have done a biopic back in the day, he'd have been a fantastic John Holmes.
Yes, yeah, totally. Sallow, skinny, long face. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I like Roma Violenta. It's as I said, it's going to seem very similar to this stuff because it's all coming out at the same time and it's all kind of influencing itself. It's a bit of a snake eating its own tail. But yeah, Does
it have the use of the phrase or the word cruds several times.
It might.
Like a kind of weird, there's something a bit Judge Dredd about that.
You're right. You little cruds.
Yeah. Merrili's got to clean up Mega City 4 of the cruds.
He actually would have been without, he would have been a great Judge Dredd. It's funny, that may be why I like this film so much. Is because it is exactly the fascism of
certainly.
The joke, the kind of the jokey fascism of those things.
Again, same. The reason I love Dirty Harry, right, is that playful kind of nature of it.
And the villains
before trolling became dangerous and and
gaslighty.
And
I think too, and it's funny to actually, I know I said some things about Dirty Harry last time we spoke, which were unfair. I think what's interesting about Dirty Harry, right, the original film, is that it is much more playful, and I think Harry seems like it is more gray zone, and I feel like the sequels, like anything, it gets more and more like, he is the hero.
Sudden impact in the Deadpool. It's they've lost the plot, right? They've bought their own. They
drank their own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, they don't get their own joke anymore. Even the Enforcer isn't that great a film, but it's still, the character's still kind of playful. And Magnum Force is actually pretty good.
No, agreed. Yeah, the first couple, but by the 80s, well, that's the problem with the 80s, I suppose, is that everyone that's what people wanted.
Well, if you if you remember Deadpool, it's like fucking it's proper. The villain is someone who makes violent music videos, and you've got Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle, and it's proper reactionary Reagan.
And Jim Carrey, right, playing their version of Anyway, so in this one, Inspector Betty has been sent down from Rome, where violent Rome, now it's in violent Naples.
And he meets Commandant Shirley.
Yes,
immediately.
And then almost immediately, this movie, we get into Luciano Rossi, who we haven't seen up until now in any of these films, I think, right?
Yeah.
Particularly twitchy and scummy in this one. And this is great too. This shows just how fucked up. I mean, if this is supposed to be real, right? A real picture of what Rome is like, or no, Naples is like at the time. We have basically a guy out, right, who gets put upon by these guys who are like, we got to take you back to your house, asshole, because we're trying to break in and your fucking alarm system's going off. You need to come with us to deactivate it. And he's like, oh, he goes back, he deactivates the thing, and then they take his wife off and have their way with her. Just like, what the fuck?
I have to admit here, I remember nothing of this film.
Right.
Like, it's so interchangeable for me.
Yes.
Largely.
Yeah. At this point, it does start to blend into one.
Right. I just remember the bowling ball being like, that's a new wrinkle. A violent game of bowling. I thought that was quite good, because at first I was like, oh no, because it's edited strangely, and you're like, oh no, but then they cut back and you get full gory shot, and you're like, oh nice.
It's bloody. And there's a scene near the end as well where what the hell's his name? Elio Zamuto, who plays one of the various scumbags. He's the mustachioed, good-looking guy who always jumps on a motorbike to get back to the police station to sign in for his that's a scam, right? He robs a bank with his gang, but then he always gets back minutes later to the police station to sign off on his parole thing so that they'll never suspect him, right? But then Merle does, in fact, figure it out, and near the end, there's a whole part with one of those kind of cable car train things, and Merle doing his own stunt, very Tom Cruise, jumps off the top on top of the train car. But then the guy, he has a lady hostage, and he holds her head out the window and smashes her face against a passing train, and then pulls it back in, and it's very much the gore side of Lenzi at that point. Right. It's like, oh shit, that's unexpectedly harsh.
Memorable highlights, right? It's a shame the rest of it doesn't live up to that.
And they really just didn't use, as I said, Saxon who can be great, right, and is great
He's very
in
underutilized. Yeah.
but he's totally flat here. But there is, a granny is knocked down some stairs. That's always good to see. It does remind me of that amazing scene, actually, again in Rome Armed to the Teeth, where a woman is knocked over by some bike punks onto her toddler, and I was like, that's a real toddler, and that woman's actually falling on it.
Right.
Stunt toddler. Yeah. Oh, and this is the only film. This shows how fucked up Italy is in the 70s. That the theme tune is stolen. So there's a point at which Murley is out, and it's you have to earn your money, son. It's playing on a transistor radio, and it's like it's non-diegetic sound or whatever the hell it is. It's like or diegetic sound.
Diegetic sound, yeah.
Diegetic, thank you. Yeah, it's diegetic sound. So it's not actually playing on the soundtrack. It's just playing on this radio, and a dude runs up and steals the soundtrack and runs away with it. And then Murley, just like Silva did, chases after him and beats the shit out of him. And a bunch of passersby are like, it's a radio, dude. Don't kill that guy over it. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. This does have a kid, Gennarino, who is, and this is, again, one of my favorite things about this film, right? So this kid, Gennarino, is introduced walking across the road, limping.
Oh yes, I remember this now. Yeah.
And then like when he gets to the other side, he's just this whole like little Italian like yeah fuck you thing, to the drivers, and they're like hey. And then later in the film, because it's a Lenzi crime film, he ends up getting brutally he's in they torch his dad's garage, and then he ends up with an actual limp at the end of the film, right? So you get that ending where he's turned in his badge. He's like, I'm done with this. I'm forced to use methods that are, yeah. And then he sees the kid limping across the road, and he's like, turn the car around.
See, I was disappointed. I was hoping that was the point where the kid gets run over. I was hoping it was like a Boy Who Cried Wolf thing, and there was someone like, I know you can dodge out of the way, kid, and runs him down. That would have been quite satisfying.
So in Weapons of Death, I think it is,
right.
which is a semi-sequel to this, not starring Murley again, but basically I think they bring back Silva's in that one. And anyway, Lettered Man, I think, maybe plays the cop. But Gennarino shows up with the name Gennarino and the limp still, and he's now leading a little gang of like Little Rascals street kids. And I read a review of that was really interesting, where they said like what's funny about this film is, and and like Murley as well, like pinching his little cheek and be like, yeah, little kid, yeah, you're awesome. These are the kids that will grow up in like 10 years to be the ones who are smashing people in the face with bricks inside Kleenex boxes. So why all the like, yeah, it's just youth, and then like, oh yeah, until they're 16, and then I have to beat the living shit out of them and possibly shoot them in the face. Just food for thought. But anyway, I think I'm done with this. Maybe?
No, yes, you are.
Okay, all right. Tough cop.
Or free hand for a.
Free hand for a tough cop. Yes. Because I assume that's got to do with when they go to see those ladies by the fires at the side of the road that we see a lot of these films.
Yes. Yeah. We hadn't seen them for at least one of these films didn't have them in, and I missed.
Yeah, but most of them do.
Come back. Oh, there we go. Good, excellent.
But yes, yeah. So that's why I assume where the free hand for a tough cop comes from.
I see. You were trying to be funny, weren't you there?
Yes. Sorry about that.
But hold up a sign or something next time.
So this is the one that has a lot of in-joke spaghetti western shit going on in it. Right down to the boat,
and that boat again.
And the boat definitely shows up. Yes. So it opens with this whole like Monument Valley thing and Thomas Million's name coming up, and so it does look very spaghetti. And then it turns out we're in we're in a police, like not a police, we're in a jail, right? And so there's a bunch of criminals watching this spaghetti western. They're all making fun of it and saying this is shit, which is interesting.
That was quite amusing that they're all like, what the fuck am I watching this crap for?
Well, I mean, it's a very much a comment on the previous, genre, and again, what Million was famous for. And apparently in the Italian dub, there's a scene later on where Million says to, once again, Luca or whatever his name, Luciano Catanacci is back again as our villain. He says to him like "Corri uomo corri," which is "run man run." So a little in joke for the Italian audience that went over the not in the American dub.
That's an annoying in joke, though, right? That's like the kind of in joke you don't really want to.
No. But here's the thing: this film includes something that every time I watch it bothers me. Like it's a little like at the back of my neck, right? So the very beginning of the film, Million's there. He's sitting back in his chair watching this spaghetti western, and he leans over. He gets all uncomfortable, and he's like, "I gotta take a shit. Save my seat." He gets up, he leaves, and is immediately punched out by Claudio Casanelli playing our Merle for this film, right? Because Merle wasn't around, I'm guessing, and also Million and Merle apparently hated each other.
Casanelli not really a particularly good replacement for
not at this. No, apparently he was the original choice though for Silva's character in Manhunt, and that might have some actual emoting from our bereaved dad, but I wouldn't want to see anyone else in the role. But yeah, so anyway, he gets taken off, and the rest of the movie I'm wondering like, is he still like, did he get the shit or not? Like it's like I don't know if I'm a little bit on the spectrum or something, maybe, but like that just fully upsets me that the rest of the movie we don't.
He still carries it to this day. Yeah, so this is Thomas Millian, his first outing as a garbage can or trash, I guess, literally is what the
yeah.
And so basically he's been bussed out of prison by Claudio Casanelli because he wants him to, what the fuck does he want to do? I can't remember now.
Well, a little girl has been kidnapped. A little girl dying of kidney failure has been kidnapped.
This is in Sardinia, is it? At least some part of this film takes place in Sardinia. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, she's been kidnapped and she has some kind of illness, and so she needs to get medical attention. And I couldn't quite get my head around, why did Casanelli think Milian was the only man for the job? Is it because he could go undercover?
I believe he had worked for Brescianelli before. Brescianelli is our kidnapped syndicate boss, played by Henry Silva.
Right. Very wasted in this, actually.
Yeah, he's barely in the movie. But what little of him there is gold. Like, for example, right near the end of the film, the girl is dying of kidney failure. She's in serious pain. She's like super cute little, again, 7-year-old girl. She's lying in this bed, weeping, calling up her mommy. And his line is like,
shut up, you bitch.
Like,
yeah.
Whoa. And then later on they're going around for a box to put her in. Like, all right, that's probably about the right size. It's so harsh.
Yeah. Yes. So that's the setup. So that's the framework, and then it gets episodic, right? Because basically Thomas Jan jumps about in the underworld, meeting different people, basically trying to get to the location of the bad guys so they can save the little girl. This involves a scene in a movie theater which is playing Salon Kitty, I noticed, where someone goes up and punches the female ticket vendor with a brick.
In a Kleenex box.
Yes, in order to steal, I don't know, not a large amount of money. Right, yeah.
And that guy, actually, I quite like. So one of those two skeevy.
Isn't he the fucking rich kid again? Isn't he one of the?
No, so he plays this really strange character in Manhunt who shows up for a couple of seconds. He shows up at the house, and he looks like he's straight out of a giallo or something. He's got long, sallow face and curly black hair, and he's playing with a knife in the kitchen and freaking out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then it turns out he's like a memorial salesman who's trying to sell them like a plaster saint or something for their dead daughter's grave, and she freaks out and kicks him out. So yeah, but he looks very like he should have been in if he wasn't a Pasolini film. He looks like one of those street kid scumbags that anyway, he's good.
So Casanelli and Thomas Leon, they have this they have this whole he's going to
buddy movie 48 hours Eddie Murphy,
but he's also going to always try and get away kind of thing, right, going on.
And they enlist the help of 3 other criminals, right? The guys who are hiding out. They've done a train robbery that's gone wrong, and then they go to hide out Thomas Million's boat from that other movie, and the boat that everyone. I would imagine the police are just like, we should just go to the boat.
Yeah, let's go to that boat. They're always there. Very unimaginative. The criminals in this. Whether it's Sardinia or Rome or Naples, they go to this boat.
That same boat. So in that gang, there's 2 actors who have been showing up kind of in all of these things and will show up again. Robert Hundar.
I quite like Robert Hundar.
He does look a bit like what's his name? Who played Frankenstein? Peter Boyle's Frankenstein, mixed with, as I said, Breslau from the Carry On films. But yeah, and then the other guy, Biagio Pelligra, who's the kind of curly-haired fella, and he shows up in a few of these things, and he's always pretty decent for a guy who was obviously very much a B actor. You don't hear about him in anything else,
right?
And then there's Giuseppe Castellano as Valunga, who's the red-headed, square-faced guy who also shows up in a bunch of these and is in a ton of spaghetti westerns as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. If you're going to go jumping through there's people like Salvatore Bila, for example, who's in everything, it seems. He's like in all these films. There's a lot of face. And sometimes you can't always put a face to the name, but you know the face. And then there's a bunch of names that you see a lot. And after a while, you learn to attach
them together.
Yeah.
Who's the little guy who looks like Toby Jones and Peter Lorre had a kid? Like he's like Pigozzi or something like that. Is him. He's in a bunch of these as well. Is it Pigozzi or something like
that?
Mingozzi. Yeah.
You're thinking of what's his name? The Alan Collins, right?
Oh, right.
Pigozzi,
yes.
Yeah. Who's also a bit Toby Jonesy.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I mean, again, it's very episodic. In fact, this is the one I had the hardest time when I was going through my screen grabs, trying to figure out how this played out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of toing and froing as they try to figure out. There is a little scene though that made me think about Silva as, again, I'm always fantasy casting Parker, you know. In this film, it's established that Silva's character has had facial reconstructive surgery so that no one will recognize him. Right.
With wood.
Yes, yeah.
Accidentally went to a lumber yard instead of a hospital.
When was the last time you watched the Dick Tracy film?
The Warren Beatty one?
Yes.
Oh, not
back then.
It was new, I don't think.
Yeah. I would just look up a screen grab of Silva in that film. It's fantastic. They've just rebuilt his face slightly bigger over the top of his face. It's exactly the same. Like all the other
like wood face or something.
Prune face.
Oh, right, okay.
Maybe not.
I was planning to watch that again at some point because it has been so long. I think I've finally got over my initial disappointment of seeing it in theaters in 1990, I guess.
I haven't seen it since then either.
No. So
I am kind of interested
because it does have an interesting cast. That was the one thing I remember about the film was the cast was fun.
The Rogues Gallery.
Yeah. But all the shit with Warren Beatty and is it Madonna in that? It is Madonna, right? Yeah, all that stuff was just terrible. So I'm keen to watch that again because I like. Actually, Dick Tracy is someone we might want to do on the comics thing at some point because I don't think I've ever really read the comics, but I've always do you remember the cartoon? It must be from the 60s or something, and they used to show it when I was a kid on TV, and it was the one that would start with like the siren, and you'd have a bird's eye view of like a car going along streets, and something about the kind of very angular look of that cartoon I quite liked. And I quite like the old 40s Dick Tracy films. And again, I think it's because they have those cool kind of characters, right? Like big head dog, whatever the fuck they're called.
Right, flat top and all those guys.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. He's the only one who they were probably like, what are we even gonna like? He just already looks like
just call him Silverface.
Exactly. But anyway, but yeah, I do sometimes think like, you know what? He's got the meanness and the flatness, actually, I think, to be a decent 70s Parker.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. There's something not, like I said, again, I've said this before, it's such a shame. It's such a shame that it's not a good film. Because I really think Mel Gibson is actually a very good Parker.
Yeah, and I mean, Statham, I think that's also a shame that that's a piece of shit, because I think he's not bad.
Statham's a bit too likable, I think.
Okay.
For me, just naturally likable. No, something about the way Mel Gibson plays it, because he doesn't do his jokey, if I remember correctly, he doesn't do his jokey Lethal Weapon thing. He's quite
yeah, for the most part. Yeah. And in fact, there's the other version of it
opportunity, that film is such a missed
there's the version of it though. Have you seen the director's cut, which
that's different, that's closer, isn't it? But it's still closer, not
no
great.
Perfect.
No, it's not the outfit or point.
No.
Anyway.
In this one, Manezza does have another brother, apparently not the Hunchback, because he's going to be given the Hunchback brother soon. But he has another brother in this who looks like Luigi out of Super Mario, who hangs out in a milk factory somewhere. And that death scene is quite cool. Actually the brother doesn't get killed. Another guy gets killed because they swapped hats.
Right.
And then you get all the milk pouring out onto his dead body. And then it gives Manezza a chance to kill the really skinny, sallow-looking, scummy factory guard, and he does the whole thing with the two glasses of milk. One's poison and one's not, and he drinks the non-poison. He shoots him anyway.
Anyway, this one, it's all right.
It's all right.
It's all right. To be honest with you, see, for me, this, which is just all right, and like Manhunt, there isn't that big a difference in quality as there would be for you. Like,
yes,
they're both all right. Slightly different in tone, but so I'm assuming you've probably watched the sequel Destruction Force at some point.
Yes.
Like,
actually,
how does that compare? Because we won't be getting to that in this series, because Umberto didn't direct it.
Different director, yeah. So that's Luke Miranda playing the Mercia Murley one in that film, although he's a bit more Claudio Casanelli in that, because again, it's him having to work with Manezza. It's another one of these cop teams up with sketchy.
Funny you mention that. Is Casanelli kind of a little bit Luke Miranda anyway?
Yeah. Although he's a bit less wooden. Luke Miranda's quite wooden as well. But then, not
supremely silver wood, right? Like
no,
common or garden wood, right?
Yes, that's mahogany.
Right.
So the there's a,
which, as we know, is rare
and hard to cut down. So in that one, it opens with a scene I love of Million. He owns a little spaghetti restaurant at the beginning of that with his wife. And his relationship with her is great, and the shit he says to the customers is outrageous because it's Manezza, and that's one of my wife's favorite movies. Jen is a huge fan of Destruction Force, because it doesn't lean into the now you're going to get raped with a stick or whatever the hell happens in some of these other films, which is not great to watch with anyone who takes that isn't on board,
isn't keen on stick rape.
With the over-the-top nature of these films, right? You wouldn't want to show these to anyone. Yeah, really to anyone, probably at this day and age. You need a fairly thick skin and a fairly warped sense of humor. But anyway, I do like Destruction Force for sure. Okay. If you like what's going on here, you're definitely going to enjoy what's going on in Destruction Force.
Well, so that brings us to again, I would say not quite as good as Raw Arm to the Teeth, but a worthy successor in the shape of the Cynic, the Rat, and the Fist.
Yes, and it is indeed a successor, right? Because this is him back playing Leonardo Tanzi again. Yes. Although again, who cares? It's the same character every time. It doesn't matter.
Although to be fair, he is slightly mellower than usual because he's retired from being an inspector.
Yes.
He now edits crime novels or something.
Yes. Umberto Lenzi.
Can I just say as well that he edits crime novels for some reason in the fucking printing press.
Yes.
That's
Well, you know,
is allowed. Like, this must get to press as soon as possible. I'd understand if it was a newspaper or something, but I'm not sure why his office is next to the loud printing.
That is strange. You're right. So yes, yeah, he has given up. You know, obviously the methods that he was being forced to use were just they were, you know, he was losing a lot of CIs or whatever, you know, a lot of undercover cops. So he's given up the life of being an angry cop. I also, you know, don't forget Luciano or whatever his name is, Catanacci, told him he needed to take a tranquilizer pill in that previous film. So he clearly did go on a steady course of Valium, because he smiles in this one. He occasionally joshes with people like his landlady and stuff, and you're like, who is this Merle?
Yes, I don't like it.
Yeah, it's disconcerting.
Yeah.
So yes, but you know, he pretty quickly gets back on the job because this is the one where apparently yet another lookalike of the various versions of Thomas Millian who have been harassing the Mertzi Merles of this world. This one called the Chinaman.
Yes.
Who is not Chinese.
And thank God, because unfortunately I have seen The White, the Yellow, and the Black, in which Thomas Millian plays. Was he Japanese in that one?
Maybe, but then he definitely is playing Chinese in Delito al Ristorante Cinese, one of the later really bad Nico Giraldi films where he plays a dual role as
I haven't seen
Chinese.
that one, but I've definitely seen The White, the Yellow, and the Black, a West. Amazingly, a fucking Sergio Corbucci
movie.
Western, which is just like, what? Sergio Corbucci made this? Really?
Yep.
And that's a rough one.
Well, yeah, and that's pleasant compared to where the Chinese restaurant.
Well, now I'm very keen to see it. I'm very keen to see it.
I probably have a copy of it that I can.
Yes, I probably need that whole run of films actually. If you have
the Giraldis, okay,
yeah.
Some of them are great. Some of the early ones are great, I think. As these get broader and more comedic, but I have a soft spot for the first couple. But then they go so broad that they're just unwatchable. But yeah, so he plays, and again, he's reined it back in a bit. This is a bit more of a sleazier, scummier, meaner role for Millian in this, and then we have a much better turn from John Saxon.
Yes.
I love John Saxon in this film.
Well, that said, one thing about this, I think, so my take on this film is that when you've got merely John Saxon and Millian, I was expecting like no scenery to be left unchewed, right? But to be fair, compared to what levels they could get to, I'm wondering if they cancel each other out or something. They're all surprisingly subdued. So this film, at first, because I was expecting that, and I was expecting something a little bit more trashy, Rome arm to the teeth kind of. And it took me a little while to get into the groove of the film. And then, I didn't get the full-on Gurnathon that I was expecting. But if you take a back seat and forget about that, and then it's actually close to a solid, good crime film, even more so than Romantic. And it's funny, so it's weird. It falls a little bit between two. I think this is almost a much better film than any of the other ones we watched. Oddly enough, undercut by its episodic nature. Like, if it hadn't had the episodic thing that all these films, this could have been like a proper, not a classic, but it could be like a proper, that's a solid crime film. Do you know what I mean? So it's weird. I enjoyed this, but it falls short of being this, and it falls short of being that. Do you think, is that fair?
No, that makes sense to me for sure. Because you're right, it is a bit more cohesive. It's a bit more, the plot threads connect a bit better, so that when we do go off to the side for characters that we're like, oh, we have another scene of scumbags doing something scummy that aren't related to the bigger plot. It takes away from some of that forward whatever. I'm losing my
but not for, that's what I liked about it was again aided by fantastic Franco Michelazzi on firing on all cylinders here. It's got a kind of groove to it. It's slightly like it's slightly a slower burn. It takes its time to tell a proper. That's what I mean. It's like it's not necessarily just ba 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 ba. It's almost a really good kind of get into the groove crime film. Almost, but I did enjoy it. I enjoy this and Rome because this is kind of the secret. So it's a good pairing. These two. This is like me kind of getting it.
I'm glad to hear that. You
can finally happened. Right?
Okay. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I mean, again, there's a few really nice set pieces. Like there's the scene where we've got a lot of our familiar faces back again, right? We've got Robert Hundar back again, playing one of Thomas Million's underlings, who's kind of dopey. And he shows up.
Ori turns up again as well in a bigger role than she got before. That doesn't involve, being abused.
Well,
a little bit, obviously. I mean, you can't have a, I don't know. What are you thinking?
This is the one that has Merle like.
Do you think a female character who isn't?
Well, because she's the one who's like she's initially with some one of the drug smuggler guys that works for Saxon, right? And then she leaves, and then Merle by happenstance ends up at because some ex cop. He's an ex cop, so a cop friend of his goes to him and goes like, "You need to help me with my." It's very much exactly the same scene actually as the drug addicted sister of the other cop he tried to save from Rasimov, but now this one's involved in drugs and porn. So he's like, so they go to the porn studio, and Merle punches everybody out, and then finds his new girlfriend there, and then he slaps her, and he says to her, "Do you feel better now?" And she says, "Yes, I do."
She almost looked like she judges that. She's just like, "I'll have another one of those, please." Yeah.
Oh, Lenzi. Okay. So. But yes, she's in it, and she looks great as she did. But anyway, so the scene where Robert Hundar, his character Dario, shows up, and he's either got a message from Million or he's got money to whatever. And it's a scene where, because Saxon's got these big, terrifying German dogs with like German names like Klaus and Schultz or whatever the hell they are. I think they're Dobermans, right?
I think you're thinking of the electronic musician who we went to see and fell asleep watching, Klaus Schultz.
That might be
what you've done there.
Okay, well, regardless, something like that.
It wasn't our fault. It was seating, right? It wasn't standing. So we just we both
drifted off.
Fell asleep.
I forgot about that completely.
It was quite nice. It was quite a gentle night out to fall asleep to the music of Klaus Schultz.
Probably not terribly polite or.
No, do you remember how enthusiastic he was about the audience? Because I think it was Captain Trip Records, right? They brought him out there to play. Do you remember he was like, "Oh my goodness, you are all so polite and you're sitting down and listening, and it is like a to opera." He was like really, really excited, and so no, I think
that's really slowly.
Yeah. Yes, that's right, Klaus.
But anyway, so the scene where he shows up and they found that's obviously somebody's been skimming off the take, and so it's the golf scene, right, where Saxon lays out all the golf balls,
golf torch,
and fires them at the face of this guy, and that's I remember watching it the first time and being like, "Ooh, yes, this is why I come to."
This is why I love golf. Also becomes a bit of a heist film for a bit.
Which
not bad,
This is a scene, however, that's like not helped by being in HD. So when I watched it the first time in a pan and scan grainy VHS, I could squint and be like, "Yeah, those probably are lasers."
Right.
Not pieces of wool stretched from wall to wall that are clearly throwing shadows that Murley is scurrying under. Yeah.
Also,
But I
help
did like.
help me out here, Nick, because I've written something down, and I don't know why I've written it down. I can't remember. Why have I written down the Ballad of the Shitheads?
Oh, yes. So at one point, in all the machinations, basically to explain the plot as a whole, really quickly. So Million's character, the Chinaman, has decided to try to whack Murley's ex-cop because Murley was the one who put him in jail.
Yes.
Murley then decides the best way to get back at this is to play them off against each other. He's going to play Saxon's, drug lord off against Million.
Well, first he plays dead. He pretends to be dead, right?
For a little bit, yeah.
He like go into a witness protection, and then he's no, fuck, I need to go back to Rome, and meanwhile there's a gang war escalating between Saxon and the Chinaman, right?
Yeah, although they're playing it very cool, like they're still in with each other. Yeah. So you were asking about the Ballad of the Shithead. So basically, as they're doing this kind of tit for tat stuff, there's a character that Murley, he's the guy he was the ex-boyfriend of Murley's girlfriend, right? And he's a drug smuggler, and Murley beats the shit out of him and puts him in the hospital, but makes it appear as though
the guy who clearly wasn't slapping her around enough.
No, exactly.
She left him.
And so basically Murley then has some woman call Saxon to tell him, oh, it's the Chinaman who's behind all of this, and he's taken the money or whatever it is. And so it's all, who cares anyway. So Million is sent to the hospital to kill this guy, and that's where he's talking to a nun outside, because Million's thing in this movie, you may remember, is he likes to hand out little Catholic mass things for people's death, whatever, like these little booklet things that you get when somebody's passed away. He sends one to Murley, and it always says something like to a real asshole and son of a bitch, Leonard Hans. Anyway, so he asks the nun, he's like, I'd like to also request a song for it's going to be the Ballad of the Shit.
That's right. That made me laugh.
Yes. Million's good in this. He definitely
I'm assuming that's him just ad-libbing.
Yes. And I mean, we'll see soon. He starts getting actual credits for all the dialogue for his characters.
Yes.
But yeah, he did.
No, but this is a fun one, right? This is worthwhile. I would say Rome Armed to the Teeth and Syndicate Rat in the Fist is a pretty good double bill. Are we ready to take a massive left-hand turn?
No, because fuck this movie.
Well, I see you say that, but I'm not as down on it as I know some
Interesting.
people. Yeah.
Interesting.
I
struggled with this. I struggled manfully with this thing, and I'm worried about having to immediately go back here again I'm almost thinking maybe I'll watch Brooklyn or whatever it is, from Corleone to Brooklyn first, just so I give myself a break.
Well, I've already gone there, so I know, but I'm not gonna preempt. So so this is Battle Force, or the biggest battle, or the greatest battle, or Il Grande Itacco, I don't know.
Itacco, probably, yep.
Italian, West German, Yugoslavian co-production from 1977. So I'm assuming mostly shot in Yugoslavia, where you can blow things up to your heart's content, until the country splinters and then they blow it up to their heart's content some more. 102-minute version we're watching. I think there might be a slightly longer version. I think there might be a slightly and maybe some more to Edwidge Fenwich's character, from what I read. So basically, it's a mini epic, notable for using quite a lot of on-set sound as well, right? So it's
Yes, I was going to say that blew my mind when I was like, oh, I can hear room ambiance. What's going on?
Yes, this isn't. Yes, what's happening? Yes. Apart from not Juliana Gemma though, because Juliana Gemma plays an Englishman.
Yes, with quite a nice plummy, upper class accent.
Yeah, suddenly all the atmosphere goes out the room, right?
Yes, whenever he speaks. And then the same with Ray Lovelock, who also has an American accent in this.
But when you're and get this for big stars, when you're seeing, Henry Fonda and John Huston, they are speaking in their own voices. Who have just been in that other classic Tentacles together. Which is, again, one of those films like, God, I wish that film was the film I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Because Tentacles is actually quite boring.
Mm-hmm.
After that first shot of some tentacles going towards a pram, which is quite awesome, about to snatch some child, the rest of it actually plays out quite boring. Although fun score, right? But isn't that even recycled? It's a Stelvio Cipriani score, right?
Yes, yeah.
But it's recycled from something else, right? Originally, I don't think Tentacles is its origin, but it's been in loads of things since. It's in like Death Proof and. Speaking of scores, Franco Michalizzi here. It's kind of interesting that this score is it's like straining to be pro crime, and then suddenly getting pulled back and putting into
the Marshall.
Like
it's weird.
Wow, and then it's like
it's a strange one. And not just that too, but also what through me was like, well, we have a lot of faces from the films we've just been watching now, but then we also have like even the font that he's using around this time, is like the crime film font is used in like Tangiers 1943, whatever the hell it is. It's in that it's weird.
So and also you get little bits of narration by Orson Welles as well.
Was that in the version we watched? I wasn't sure if that was.
I'm not sure because I didn't jump out at me as.
I don't think it is. I think there's an American cut that's quite a bit shorter.
Okay.
Has Orson Welles doing maybe some of the bridging because they had to bridge because they cut stuff out.
Right. I mean, I don't know. It's difficult to. It seems strange to me that they would. I mean, it didn't jump out at me as Orson Welles, but I didn't go back and watch it either. So
it didn't sound. To me, it sounded like a stock dubbing Italian voice I've heard 1,000 times before, and not Orson Welles.
I wonder. Fuck, I have to watch it again. Anyway, so basically, this is it's a World War II mini epic. It starts in pre World War II 1936 Berlin Olympics, and you get to see footage of everyone's mate Hitler, as I like to call him, and we get Henry Fonda's kind of he's some kind of military higher up, and Stacy Keach's his kind of equal in the German army, I suppose, and they're like, oh yes, well, let us not, let's make sure the world doesn't go to war, and they're all very friendly, and they swap fucking
medals
or coins or something, or anyway, and that so basically you have, so that's like the framework. So then you have the
John Huston is there too, right?
I think so, yeah.
He is not opening.
So World War II plays out, and then basically you see all these characters at different points and how they relate to each other. So Ray Lovelock plays Henry Fonda's son. I will give you a bit of a heads up. In From Hell to Victory, he plays George Peppard's son.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot that. Sorry, I had forgotten that's something to look forward to, because obviously I was a big fan of the A-Team as a child, and so it'll be interesting to see. Have you ever tried watching that since you were a child?
I did. Don't.
Very hard to sit through a single episode.
It's rough. You're just looking forward to the bit where they weld something and escape, right? That's the
Beats.
Yeah. I ain't getting on no plane. Drink that milk. Every fucking time, man. Anyway, so it's a weird one because they try and cram they basically try and cram the entire mini-series, The World at War, whatever it was, The Wind at War, whatever, into like a 100-minute film. Right? It's ridiculous. It jumps from you're in. Yeah, actually, they do spend most of the time in North Africa. It seems.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of tanks.
Except for the bit where they clearly. I kept expecting Jack Palance to suddenly also jump out and attack that big gun on the train, because all that footage was straight out of that film, and also a certain amount of the footage when they attack the beach. Except now it's Giuliano Gemma in the like green face paint coming up the beach and going into the bunkers. But I was like, this is all shit from that film from a couple of years ago with Jack Palance.
I looked at that. Someone on the IMDb said there's footage from some El Alamein film as well, but I'm not sure which one. But yeah, there's footage from other places. Yeah, mostly a Battle of the Commandos. And yeah, so the thing is, some of the action battle scenes are actually quite good, I think. Clearly, Lenzi is better at making a small, like, that's the thing, even because we haven't seen a really good war film, but I can see him doing one. But if it's like one, like a commando raid or something, like one thing, but this trying to do the whole Second World War. I mean, you even get, oh yeah, so this is interesting. So Patton turns up for about a minute.
Yes. Yeah, I was like, well, that's not George C. Scott.
But what's interesting is that guy is a guy called Robert Spafford, right? And he did a lot of dubbing for these films.
Oh,
he's one of the familiar Italian dubbing voices.
Okay.
He was also in that fucking Inchon film we watched.
Of course he was.
And before all that, he seemed to have he had a brief career as a film director, and he made like a handful of films in the 60s. The last of which, in 1963, was the Christine Keeler affair, the Profumo Scandal movie. Like straight after that broke, right? Like 25 years before Scandal or whatever. Right? So he's the guy, the Patton in this directed the first Christine Keeler film, which is kind of interesting. So I think some of this is actually not bad. I think it's actually quite good. The problem is there's too much of it in one film, and then you got Samantha Eggar as well, right? And you got Edwidge Fenech as like a kept prostitute who is also fighting for the resistance, right? But there's not so much of the resistance stuff apparently in this version. So her story is just kind of grim.
Yeah, totally.
But always nice to see Edwidge Fenech.
To see her.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Andrea Boschik is in it from those Sandokan films. Nice to see him again. Michel Soavi, isn't it? Somewhere.
Yeah, as a photograph.
Oh, is it?
That's all he is. He plays Ted, the brother of
right. Okay.
And so he's seen 2 times in the film when they pan over to a photograph of him in his little military hat. But he's Fonda's other son who dies off screen, and we never actually see
his second.
But it is very much him. If you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely the director of Cemetery Man.
Second screen credit after being in The School Teacher, the first of that hit series with Edwidge Fenech being like a sexy teacher.
Yes.
So so for me at least, this wasn't a show that you seem to have thought it was. I thought it was okay. It didn't drag anything, but it's trying way too much within a limited means and also limited time span, right? Like it's just and yeah, spoilers, but this is almost exactly the same framework they try for From Hell to Victory as well.
Oh, great.
With Ray Lovelock as someone else's son this time. But I have to admit, I didn't hate this as much as some people seem to really dislike this film quite a bit. As I believe we might be about to hear from our friend Nick. Take it away, Nick.
So I was reading Umberto Lenzi's obituary in maybe the Daily Telegraph earlier today.
Okay.
And in kind of in amongst it, there were these different little quotes, and one was a quote from some, I'm guessing, an earlier interview done with him, possibly by the Telegraph at some point in the 90s or early 2000s, where he, he seems to be a fairly easily upset man.
I'm quite surprised that the Daily Telegraph interviewed Umberto Lenzi, to be honest with you. That's did they interview other Italian?
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Directors?
Maybe it was just they were quoting from another interview, but it seemed like they were intimating that it was an interview done for a British.
Right. I'm even surprised they had a Lenzi obituary, to be honest. I mean,
but yeah, I think
Joe Martino get one in the Telegraph.
I hope so. But in this anyway, Lenzi. So in this quote, they were basically saying, Lenzi had responded after being asked about his cannibal films, basically like, I don't know why people keep asking me about that shit. Those films were like, I don't, he said, why does nobody ever ask me about Battle of whatever the fuck this thing is called? Yeah, like that's a film with like Fonda and Houston and
Right.
And I'm like, because that film's shit, Umberto. Like that's of all of the things you directed, that is not in your top 5. I'm sorry, buddy. Like not even close. I don't care if it has Orson Welles doing narration, and it's boring. It's
See,
like
I didn't find it. I see what you're saying. And I found Inchun massively boring. But for this
standards between what I'm watching as well, it stands out so much more. I mean, I preferred either of the two we've seen up until now of the war films. I preferred Desert Commandos, and I preferred whatever the hell the Battle of the Commandos. They're all hell of the same friggin' name of these films.
Yeah. I have to admit, every time I hear Battle Force as well, I expect someone to say only from Mattel afterwards.
Exactly, and that I would have rather seen that. The sequel to Megaforce, Megaforce 2, Battle Force, with more Henry Silva action,
more quarries.
But anyway, and I think I just couldn't invest in many of the characters or the relationships. I kind of cared a little bit about Lovelock and his weird, sad relationship with his dad, who didn't quite respect him at the beginning of the film. Like and I couldn't help but see him a little bit as I was like, oh, if you kind of squint, like you've got Lovelock, and then you've got Fonda, because Fonda is very much was very much or he's the proto Tom Hanks, right? Basically, I feel like he fulfilled the same role in American society.
I tend to think people tend to think of James Stewart more in that role, right? Than
Jimmy Stewart. I guess maybe I would combine them in my mind, like Fonda as being
some
like
unholy biological experiment.
Yeah, they put them together. They create Tom Hanks, some kind of like just likable, wholesome, all-American. Like you can trust what they say. And then Lovelock's a little bit.
I suppose. I think I have him in Once Upon a Time in the West 2 ingrained.
Right, but that was absolutely him acting against type.
No, absolutely. But for some reason, it's so strong. That's what I think of when I think of Henry Fonda. I think of that. I don't think of On Golden Pond or something.
No wonder he regretted that the rest of his life. Apparently, he was very unhappy about having made the choice to do it. Oh yeah. He was like, I ruined my screen image with that.
Burt Reynolds regretted doing Boogie Nights, right?
And Navajo Joe, basically the 2 best films he did in his entire career.
Sometimes people just don't know what's good for them, do they? These actors. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he wanted to do another Hal Needham car movie.
Or Bean. He was in fucking Bean the same year as Boogie Nights, for fuck's sake.
Anyway, so it was, as I said, it was hard for me to invest, but I did, if I squinted, as I said, it was funny because Lovelock has a tiny bit of Matt Damon about him. I was like, am I watching some kind of prototypical version of whatever the hell that's Saving Private Ryan? Stacy Keach's character, I didn't really give a shit about one way or the other.
But I like Stacy Keach in general, so
I like him too. But this, I was like,
what? So the thing about Ray Lovelock as well is he's almost recognizable when he's not a hippie. Like,
yes,
when he's clean shaven and he doesn't have long hair and he's not denim, it's like, wow, is that if I didn't see the opening credits or I probably wouldn't have noticed that it was Ray Loveland.
The teeth gap kind of always gets away from me. He's got that pronounced gap in the teeth. And we got Mad Dog Murderer, Helmut Berger.
Helmut Berger, yeah, we forgot to mention him. Who's always great.
Yeah, he's good.
Has he ever played in a hilarious buddy cop movie as twins with Ivan Rassimov? I wonder.
No, and then
that would be
and then their boss should be Uncle Klaus Kinski.
Right,
that would be ideal casting right there.
Teutonic as fuck.
Yes, you're just missing Udo Kier.
Yeah, but he's a touch of the tar brush.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I don't know. I just, I couldn't really care about, and I like Juliet. I love me some Giuliano Gemma. But in this,
I wouldn't go that
far.
I tolerate Giuliano Gemma.
No. He's great in Day of Anger. He's great. There's a couple of things he's really strong in. He's great in
Return of cast in Day of Anger, is what he is. He does the same fucking thing he does in everything in Day of Anger, but he's well cast.
And he's good at he's good at Return of Ringo. He's really strong in that.
I don't know. I have yet to be sold on. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind him. He's not bad. He's not bad in Il Bastardo, or The Bastard, where he plays brothers with Klaus Kinski. That's I really like that. That's an early, or like not political, but an early Italian crime. The 60s Italian crime films are always slightly off in interesting ways, like that Bastard, Inspector Sterling, or whatever it is, the one with Luciano Rossi and Silva. That's an interesting film. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I couldn't quite dredge up the enthusiasm to really care. No, I get that. It's just, for me, because I don't have the raging, pulsating hard-on for the Eurocrime films. I was at least having a bit of a break. I was like,
fair enough. I could see that.
Okay, good. Something a bit different. There's no wisecracking Thomas Milian, and there's no just
bristling mustache.
Yes,
of rage.
So
I will say this.
Awful. Yeah.
I will say this, that Samantha Agar has a scene where she's being basically interrogated by the SS, right? And it's one of those scenes that has synchronous sound, like it's been actually recorded, like it's her performance, like recorded there in the moment. And she's pretty good. Like it's a decent moment in the film, and then and what follows is quite harrowing right afterwards. And I was like, yeah, this I care about. This is well done. And
basically you were jonesing for a woman in extreme distress, and then finally, great.
That's what it was. That's exactly what.
I see through you, my good man. All this crap about, yes, it was such an effective scene.
And it had that weird-faced guy who was actually in a couple of the crime films as well. He plays, actually, in the next film we're going to talk about, he plays the undercover cop in the mental asylum.
Let's talk about that. Right, you're talking about. Oh no, you're not. You're not talking about Jimmy Il Fenomeno. You're talking about someone else.
Who the hell's that?
Jimmy Il Fenomeno is in what we're about to talk to, Brothers Till We Die. And he seems to be in a shitload of, and he's famous for, I guess, playing like a crazy guy. So I get he got the nickname Jimmy the Phenomenon, and he's in loads of films, and he is in Brothers Till We Die. And there's someone else. So here we go. Brothers Till We Die, La Banda del Gobbo. Band of Gobshites, I believe that's.
I think so. Yeah.
Translates that. Or Angry Vengeance.
That's a terrible title. Brothers Till We Die is a decent title. Banda del Gobbo is a good title.
Vengeance, as opposed to that happy, mellow vengeance.
Yes, middling vengeance.
So 78. So this one, like you said, Thomas Milian gets writing credits on this one, right? Him and Lenzi. Which,
and if you don't like Thomas Milian,
don't even bother.
It's not the film for you.
No. However, if you like the thought of getting chronically irrigated with Thomas Millian, this is the film.
This is the film for you. I would say even I, long time super fan of Thomas Millian, at a certain point this film was like, is this too much Thomas Millian?
Well, you attempt. I think I might watch Battle Force again.
Yeah.
Also, I think basically the double credit of Umberto Lenzi and Thomas Millian is another way of saying, yeah, we didn't really have a script. We just kind of made it up as we went along, right? Although I suppose it's slightly unfair because they do a lot of actually quite good split screen stuff.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, really impeccable. I mean, you don't see it. You don't see where the join is. It's really well.
They have to figure that out beforehand because they have to shave off his beard completely for that stuff to work. But I was going to say, actually, we introduced Millian in this spate of episodes, or back with Almost Human, and I don't think we mentioned the fact that have we ever mentioned that he's Cuban, that he's not Italian? I'm not sure if we have. Cuban actor Thomas Millian studied at
you forgot the most important bit: illegitimate father of C. Thomas Howell.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I'm sure we can say that without being.
Oh yeah, spent quite a bit of time in Miami where he did meet C. Thomas's mum.
Yeah.
Down at the beach, she was in a tea-back bikini, and things happened.
Had a thing for hunchbacks and perms
and wild overacting and rubbing your nose off.
He's pretty hot. He's pushing all my buttons.
I sometimes wonder about the amount of that in his performances.
Yes.
And what else was going on in Thomas's life at the time. I do have a book here signed by him somewhere, which I should pull out at some point later on.
Pull it
today
together enough to sign a book.
He did, yes. So
which book did he sign?
It's a book of his own photography. It's like a very arty. It's not very interesting. I just bought it because it was by him and it's signed by him. But the actual photographs.
You didn't meet him. You didn't get him to sign it.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I wish to Christ I had met Thomas Millian.
You bumped into C. Thomas Howell and you're like, can you pass this on to your dad?
Yeah, I'd love to have this signed.
Yeah.
What
do you mean? No, I don't really want a signed VHS copy of Soul Man, thanks.
Yeah.
There you go. You can have that back.
So yes,
Millian.
Millian, left Cuba. Millian's dad was, I think, connected to the Batista regime in some way, right? And then possibly in the military. His dad commits suicide after the revolution. Millian leaves, goes to the States, where he studies at the actor studio, right, where he learned method. So this kind of show, and then he goes to Italy and he does a bunch of kind of highbrow, films for your Fellinis and your Viscontis and these people, and then he starts to kind of edge out and do some of the roles that really make him famous.
Well, basically, it's because he gets to do whatever the fuck he wants, I think.
Well, yes.
Increasing.
Yes. Yeah. And so by the time you get to Almost Human, but in that interview that I read, and I think I sent to you, they talk about that his method for that film involved drinking vodka and eating speed, possibly, which might explain why he looks the way he does in that film, right? But that the method for him sometimes involved living the character. We all know about our Daniel Day-Lewis's, but I'm far more interested in thinking about Thomas Millian knocking back a vodka and eating methamphetamines in order to play that character. But anyway, so by the time we get here, I do feel like Millian is starting to go broader and broader. It feels to me like Monezza, because he plays two characters. I think we've already kind of established that in a roundabout way. He plays both. He plays the Monezza character from Freehand from a Top.
Pigsty in the English.
Yeah, now called Pigsty, yeah. And he plays a version of, with a different last name, of the Hunchback he had played in Roma.
Called Humpo, which is a great...
which does give us the movie's best line when Pigsty is hanging out of the car and Humpo has just pulled and he's like, hey, what is it? He says ain't no company needed when Humpo's getting humped.
Something, along those
lines,
yeah. Because he befriends a prostitute is very, very nice to him. Right? So yeah, his humpo in this film is clearly a different humpo because he's a very nice humpo.
And he's alive.
He's alive and he's not machine gunning people in the back of ambulances.
Yes, which is a great scene in that other film.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yes, and he also is very particular about his Albanians. I still wasn't. I suppose I kind of got that whole thread about having to get in Albania, but it was kind of quite contrived.
Yes.
I'm friends. Oddly enough, I do Saigon sometimes with a
Sal Borghese.
No, but with an Albanian who grew up in Italy.
So Sal Borghese then. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Now that you think about it, his name is Sal. Yeah. Actually, he does have a huge perm as well. That's true. This friend of mine does have a massive perm.
Fantastic.
Anyway, so what the fuck? Oh yeah. So Thomas Millian's garbage can is a mechanic or something. And basically, he looked up to his...
One of the two Thomas Millian, we should establish again, Thomas Millian playing two characters. So
yes.
One of the brothers
looks up to his older, his older brother.
Yeah, slightly older brother, twin brother.
Who's a crim, and he puts together this robbery, and then the crims, including, once again, Luciano Catenacci and Sal Borghese, try and double-cross him, and they stab him. He ends up escaping into a sewer.
That's a great scene because I think like him wading through like this hunchback character wading through a river of shit
and rats.
Is one of those things and rats that you only see in these kind of films.
Yeah, or in like a Buñuel film, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, he wants to get his back. He wants his revenge. And then there's a whole bunch of other episodes with the cops having like a hunchback police lineup to try, which is quite fun. And then
there's a cop in this that's Pino Colizzi plays Commissario Sarti, who is clearly there like, oh shit, Murley wasn't available to do this. But at least Mark Forrest is, so they just have him dubbed by the same voice, and if we squint, maybe we won't notice.
And then there's this bit where Pigsty ends up in a psych ward for a while with
he eats cigarettes. He eats cigarettes to induce a hallucination.
And also, weirdly, who's in this scene is I saw the name in the credits, really, so I kept an eye on it to make sure it is him, and it is him. So, kind of fairly obscure now, but 50s, 60s beatnik New York underground icon Taylor Mead. Of the Flower Thief fame.
Okay.
He's in the asylum. He's one of the lunatics. He gets a couple of close-ups, and he's playing with flowers as well, which I guess is a reference to the Flower Thief. And
that must be a million thing. I would imagine.
Yes, I assume he must be friends with Thomas Millian because Taylor Mead is also in Hit Squad, Little Italy, and Messalina.
Wow.
So they must have been buds, right? Taylor Mead.
Well, I've got Hit Squad if you need it. I
actually need Little Italy.
And I might have that too. I'll take a look.
So that's just an interesting kind of little bit of casting there, right? That
cool.
Millian was obviously like, hey, Taylor, come over, have a holiday. You play a lunatic in my film. Why I have Italian accent? I'm a Cuban who went to America, but
I was thrown actually by when they first go out into the garden and they there's a close up of a guy like this
yeah,
and he's all scabby and scarred up and he looks totally real, like it doesn't look makeup, and I'm like, holy shit, is that guy okay?
I don't think it's Jimmy El Fenomeno though. So
okay,
another Franco Michelizzi score, but here's my gag of the episode. It's it feels a little bit Picca Michelizzi. Hey, it's basically all the best bits, isn't it? From yeah.
In fact, I think we even hear the
Tippy Waitress. I'm here all week.
I think we even hear that that song, which shows up in 3 of them actually. The Man Before Your Time song shows up in 3 of the different films. But yeah, but again, I'll say this film's it's interesting. I've seen this a couple of times, and I saw it the original time. I saw it later. It was one that was harder to get on VHS back in the day. So I'd already seen Free Hand for a Tough Cop. I'd already seen and so when I watched this, I was like, okay, well, Millions, doing an even broader version now of the Moneta character. It's basically goofy, right? He's leaning into the comedy, but the other, like Humpo, is like, yeah, he's not as mean. In fact, I would say the healthiest male-female relationship in any of Lenzi's films that we've seen so far is actually his relationship with the streetwalker. That
no, he's nice. He's nice. He's not psychotic in any way, shape, or form. She's
nice to him. Like, it's a very sweet relationship that the two of them have as the film is out. It's weirdly, wholesome. And then the scene that's most infamous in this film, and the scene that apparently is in Italy is so infamous that most people think it's in the other film. Whenever they're asked about the Humpo character, it's the scene in the nightclub, right?
Yes.
Which really,
that's a great
scene.
Yeah.
And apparently Lenzi was not happy about it, because all of that is Millian getting his own way. Like, Millian wrote the entire speech, and Millian's
it's basically the Thomas Millian stand-up routine. So we should say they rob this kind of disco club full of wealthy clients, right? And they start off making fun of him because he's
well, I was going to say they don't. It's not even clear that they're going to rob the place until the patrons start being asked.
No, it's true. Right? It's well played.
He brings his girlfriend there, and she's kind of a streetwalker, and she's she's sweet but not very bright. The movie kind of establishes that, and they go there, and she wants to dance, and initially she's like, well, I'll dance with one of his underlings, and then because I know it's going to be hard for you physically or whatever, and he's like, no, I'll take you on the floor, and they dance, and then everyone around them starts to mock them, and then he gets up and he continues to kind of play the fool, right? But then slowly it escalates, and he pulls out the machine gun, and then he starts, and he gives this whole extended speech about like there's a line that I really like. It's like, if shit turns to gold, the poor will be born without assholes, which is just one of his, like, and it's that thing about these films, that thing of like, never, the binary is never completely that clear. Like it's always like, no, but you can kind of see that, like, it is not fair. Things are stacked. That rich people get to do crimes all the time and get away with it, and poor people are the ones who like get gunned down in the garbage heap.
It does feel like obviously it's not a period setting, but it seems like something almost out of one of the Zapata westerns you would find, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's exactly, it's him as his Cuchillo character, that kind of a thing, like and so and then it ends with them force feeding all of these rich people laxatives.
Right.
And that's what actually gets the police outraged, and the newspapers are like, we've got to deal with this Humpo maniac.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of shit and assholes coming up.
Good amount of
has anyone ever asked Millian about this?
Hey, fetish that shows up over and over again.
Have you noticed?
Mm-hmm.
So if the thing is, this is one of those. This film is for your average viewer. Maybe not. Not that it's a terrible film, but you're not really missing.
No. It should never be your starting point.
No, it's getting to that tail end of self-parodic.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you are a Thomas Millian fan and you haven't seen it, you probably should check it out, because I mean, I know he did this a few other times as well, the dual role thing, right? It's a dream come true for self-indulgent actors, right? But this is the first one out the gate. Is this the first time he's done?
Yes, I think so.
So it's still, there's something a little fresh about, and I mean, get a palate cleanser ready for immediately after. So it's got a kind of don't bother you lot essential viewing. It's one of those kind of
Yes, absolutely.
strange. So, are we crawling out the bumhole for now?
I think we should. We've got a minute left, so why don't we exit the colon?
Yes, and we shall return to its warm environs next week. See you then.
The triumphant Machiste and Satana prepare offense for the criminal syndicate in the jungle hell of an Iguana'S Bumhole.